And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the monastery, the open bar of the internet, the world's greatest shit show, and the place where we, the good brothers and sisters of this most holy of temples, seek enlightenment through the drunkest, craziest, and most batshit ways possible. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have a returning good brother into the temple, coming to us from the world of Deus Ex Machina, previously here for the package release of Ultramodern 5, and now back with the novel and RPG and 5e RPG expansion, the Sparkplug Chronicles. The one and only Chris Diaz. How you doing today, man?
Oh, I'm fine.
It's good.
Although that is actually, oddly enough, that is one of only two projects that we're dealing with right now. There's another one that we're working on. I'm actually working on the Ultramodern, because we released the Ultramodern Bestiary in August. 445 pages, 400 monsters, and it turned out to be a huge success. So we're following that up with the Ultramodern Armory, because I was working on the weapons chapter of Sparkplug, and I realized I was creating, finally, specificity with 20th century firearms. And I looked at it and said, this should be in the armory. Why am I not doing the armory first? Because I was going to do the armory. So I put that on hold, went to the armory, and guess how many firearms are in the armory? So in case you're wondering, the first book, Ultramodern, has about 150 firearms. So how many do you think are in the Ultramodern armory?
300?
700.
Why do I feel like it? Why do I get the feeling internally somebody ended up using that lots of guns gift from the Matrix?
Well, for me, it came down to one very specific point. I had to finally face up that your parents aren't always right, and in this case, wizards is not right in how they handled ranged weaponry, which is the reason why, like I said, I was bullied off of the Reddit Kickstarter a few couple weeks ago, because I was trying to make a case for firearms in 5e, and they were very much against it. And when I made the case in Facebook, there was a bit more support, but a lot of people were still saying, "Oh, it doesn't work." And I'm like, "Are we still having this conversation?" Like,
Do you remember?
I remember having this.
I know it was a while, and believe me, getting bullied off Reddit, you're in good company. But do you remember what the counter argument was as far as why they insisted firearms can't work in 5e?
So the belief system generally states, when you look at the core first-party content, there are two issues. One, there's not enough variety in the rule system to make it work. Primarily, they gave you rules for muskets and so forth, and because there is an assumption of scaling damage, firearms do too much damage to be realistic, quote unquote, within combat. And because of the assumption that players are going to be within dungeons in small areas, generally a firearm will only be partially effective until it gets nullified by somebody moving into melee combat. But primarily it comes down to the limited number of rules that 5e has created to cover the very few ranged weapons that they have put forward. And so, and I actually have, I'm not really friends, but some people I know in the industry, and we've talked, and they've sent me some free stuff. When they did a Civil War 5e book, and they were building on the ranged combat, they still felt that they were beholden to the structure of the 5e ranged combat. And 5e ranged combat indicates that in your 6-second turn, regardless of the ranged weapon, you can fire it at least once. And there's this belief within a lot of people, especially in the gaming sphere and outside of it, about why firearms replaced bows. And for some strange reason, they all seem to be obsessed with the idea that it's all down to damage output. Like, for some reason, it's damage output is the reason why firearms replaced crossbows, which replaced longbows. And that has never been the case at all.
It's because firearms could go through armor.
But the thing is that that's not even true. That's not even true. Yeah. By the time people were using firearms, like if you're a follower of history, there's this assumption that people were walking around with big armor and big suits of armor, and so they changed to guns in order to counteract the plate armor that was around. But that's not true. Plate armor had almost completely vanished from the battlefield through expense. It was easier to simply send soldiers unarmored and make them maneuverable and give them guns rather than armor plate them. And it's interesting how armor basically just became pointless because firearms just basically got so good. There's virtually no armor that could defend against them. But at the end of the day, people kind of forget that a armor-piercing longbow, not a broadhead, but an armor-piercing arrowhead, especially a crossbow head, can just annihilate plate armor. People don't realize, if like the heavy crossbow before it became a novelty, it was pulling a string of 150 pounds, which no human being could pull with a longbow, and that would annihilate a longbow, annihilate a plate armor more so than a musket could. It had really nothing to do with armor plating or armor resistance. It was just simply how easy it would be and the speed it would be to reload. There were lots of factors, but it was the push of technology. I mean, crossbows kind of replaced longbows, and not because crossbows were better, it's because crossbows could be fired by an idiot, and longbows required training.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where I kind of look at, and of course, I look at the rules. Wizards, in an attempt to say, well, we have to make this balance for the fun of the game, decided to say, well, a musket's going to do 1 die 10 because a crossbow does 1 die 10. And the crossbow, you can fire it once per round. So the musket, you can fire once per round, maximum.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I looked at it, and then even the Civil War game said, yeah, we'll follow through with that. And I'm like, a musket and a crossbow cannot be loaded in 6 seconds in any period in history and in no situation in history. Modern crossbows can now be reloaded in some models in that time, but the vast majority of them still take 20, 25 seconds to load.
The ones that can load that fast are not nearly as powerful, have nearly as many foot-pounds.
Yeah, if you want to get the 150 pull, you're taking time. And so I was always looking at it like, why did they set that rule? Because they wanted to make sure that someone who was ranged combat could fire that weapon every single turn, and then ignored the possibility. And so when they got to ranged combat in the DMG, in that paltry 1-page rule set for modern firearms, they also created what they felt were compromises to make sure that someone could attack every single turn, regardless of realism. So basically, you could reload a firearm as a bonus action in any capacity. Like every weapon, no matter what it was, no matter what kind of firearm it was, you could fire it, you could reload it with a bonus action. And then the ranges were all the same for some reason. Like the ranges of everything was 100 to 400. And I was talking to a person that was an expert in pistols. He was like, unfortunately, most people can't hit the side of a barn with a pistol at 100 feet. And I started looking at it more and more, and I started to realize like they made no attempt whatsoever to approach this with any realistic edge. And that's fine. They made a choice. But when somebody says a pistol has to do 4 times more damage than a longbow, and this was an argument I had back in 2014 when I was doing 40 Modern and Amethyst 40, which had modern weapons, and people said it doesn't work because your pistol has to do 2 or 3 times more damage, and you can't have a first player character having a pistol. And I was asking like, wait, where are you getting that number from? Like, well, it has to do 2 or 3 times more damage than a longbow. I'm like, where are you getting that information from?
Math
and there are
mathing.
people that it's like well, and I was like, well, it has to do it because when you see how much damage, like, no, you are now applying physics that doesn't apply. Yes, absolutely. A pistol is extremely light. A pistol round, like a 9mm, bullet is yes, extremely light and moving extremely fast compared to a bow, which is extremely heavy and moving very, very slowly. And you can say how much energy that pistol is delivering, but to say that, oh yeah, because the pistol is impacting at 1100 newtons and the bow is impacting at 500 newtons, that you automatically have to say that the pistol does 2 die 10 compared to the longbow does 2 die 10. You're forgetting that a halberd does 1 die 12. Like, you cannot say that a 9mm round will do 2 die 10 in a world where a Great Maul does not do that much damage. And so like, no, you have to make compromises, and that's why they made compromises. They made compromises by reloading. So why are they suddenly saying that a pistol has to do 2 times more damage? And so when you look at that and you look at the rules and you realize that, well, no, this doesn't make any sense. Why are rifles doing so much more damage than a greatsword? And once you have to look at that, you have to then realize that they didn't really put any effort in. They looked at it purely as a dungeon romp. They made ranges that were arbitrary because at the end of the day, they were expecting you to always be in a dungeon, so your ranges wouldn't really matter. And so when it comes to these rules, you have to come to the conclusion that you just have to add to it. You just have to throw out what they did in the DMG and say, no, guess what? If you have a musket, you fired your shot, you're now out of commission for 3 rounds. But I will allow you to use your movement to help you reload faster, because no person ever, like, there's a video I saw a guy who tried to reload a musket while running at full speed. It's actually quite funny. And so I was giving people rules, and so as I was doing that, I realized if I throw out and ignore the staples of what D&D was putting forward with their ranged combat, you could actually have rules that could define potentially, as it ended up being, 700 weapons, because you could create rules. And yes, people will, well, do you have weapons that do 2 die 10? I have weapons that do 4 die 12 plus 48. Right? But guess what? That's a missile. Pistols do 1 die 4 to 1 die 6. A couple do 1 die 8. Most rifles do between 1 die 6 and 1 die 10. Heavy weapons do 1 die 10 to 2 die 8. Heavy weapons and super heavies will have maximized damage dice. And then you adding rules for reloading. Guess what? Somebody asked me, I was like, can I have a grape shot Lamont revolver? And I'm like, oh, you watched Westworld, because everybody knows what a Lamont revolver is because of Westworld. And that's a very funky weapon. I'm like, yeah, it's a nifty weapon. It's a pistol with a shotgun undermount, but it's also a cap and ball revolver. So once you fired your 9 shots out of the revolver and fired the shotgun shell, you better just toss that weapon, because if you're still in combat, you are not reloading that firearm in any convenient manner. So you better break out your secondary weapon, because you have to load your paper round and force feed the ball. Then you got to put your percussion caps on the other side. So you're doing this for about a minute. And I'm being generous by saying it takes that long. So those are some of the rules that we had to play with and say, if you want to have these weapons, these are the rules that apply to them. And that when you get to the modern weapons, when you get those weapons that can be reloaded with a bonus action, you know that weapon earned that position, rather than just this 19th century Civil War weapon can reload all 4 rounds in a bonus action. I'm like, well, no, you can't. But the SCAR or the Spear, I can't remember what the modern SCAR rifles can reload its magazine in under 2 seconds, if you have a parallel clip. Like that gives us those things. So it's like, and so people will look at the table and go, well, this is unrealistic. I go, yes. If someone gives me a pistol and I'm firing, I am going to do 1 die 4 damage. But luckily, Michael here, who's a military veteran, will be able to do more damage. He'll be more accurate. And so that's where the classes come into play. So that's what I've been doing for almost the entire month of October. It was just working on firearms. And I'd get to people, and people were like, oh, are you including this weapon? I'm like, I guess I am, and I have to write that in. Like, the same thing happened with crossbows. I mentioned crossbows earlier. I had a carbon crossbow as a single entry in the Ultramodern 5. It's now 16 different crossbows, because I assumed that there weren't great strides in crossbow technology. But thanks to a crazy German guy and his YouTube channel, there are now huge advances in crossbow technology.
Who you're talking about.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think everybody knows who this guy is, but I didn't. There's so many things I didn't know about firearms. I know way too much, and I'm not even a firearm guy. And I'm like, oh, this is the type of weapon that I want to own. And I was like, why are you saying that? You are such not a gun person. So it's just very, very humorous. Like, understanding that I was talking to my friend who's a firearms expert, and he's big on airsoft, and I thought all air rifles were airsoft rifles. I didn't realize there was a whole subgroup of air rifles that were lethal. And I'm like, I'm just discovering that there's a whole slew. And then crazy German guy decided to make a bunch of really powerful air rifles. So yeah, that's been I'm doing. So once I'm done this, I get to go back to the Sparkplug Chronicles, which I've been slowly teasing on Reddit, kind of semi-anonymously in world building and science fiction groups, getting people interested in the lore.
Yeah, and when it comes to the Sparkplug Chronicles, obviously this isn't our first rodeo when it comes to talking about different settings and the inspirations and some of the nods. We talked a bit before we went live about the bizarre attitude some people have when it comes to integrating video games into TTRPGs. But what would you say would be some of the things that would be in the Appendix N of the Sparkplug Chronicles?
Oh, damn, that's a good goddamn question. Because I actually have an Appendix N for Sparkplug Chronicles. I did actually create one. I'm not even joking. I actually have to open it up. I gotta look. Okay, so the Appendix N for Sparkplug Chronicles, and there are some games, but there's some movies as well. So for movies, Annihilation, Um, there's a movie called Prospect,
Mm-hmm.
which is a low-budget film with Pedro Pascal. Roadside Picnic, Stalker, which is a very famous Russian science fiction movie.
Um.
And
Mm-hmm. Wait, what?
yep,
Wasn't Roadside Picnic the original story, and then that became the basis for Stalker? I don't remember Stalker being an
yeah,
actual.
you're right, but there actually is someone actually made a movie called Roadside Picnic. It's a long story.
Yeah.
For games,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Well, you already mentioned
I
Stalker, so we can cross that off the list.
yeah, oddly enough, there's a game called Darkwood.
Mm-hmm.
Death Stranding is one as well.
Mm-hmm.
A game called Scorn.
AKA, what would happen if H.R. Giger became a game designer?
Yeah, and same thing with Basinski. Yeah, and two other little references. One is a game called The Forever Winter,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
which I played for a little bit and I stopped and kind of want to get my friends into it before I get into it again. And another movie that I'm trying to remember. There's a movie called The Gorge that came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a great movie, but when the main characters fall into the gorge, and I don't want to be a big spoiler, but I'm going to mention it anyway. When they fall into the gorge in the film's last act, it turns into a Basinski painting, a living Basinski painting. And it's the only time I've ever seen somebody tap Basinski from a visual artist perspective. We've seen Giger in Alien, we've seen Giger in Scorn. Basinski's in Scorn as well for the atmospheric stuff. But to watch this and go, oh, somebody took Basinski's art and said, we're just going to do this. And it's like, yeah, it looks really good. So it has that. And so when you're talking about video games, yeah, that's what Sparkplug Chronicles, like I said, there's an illustrated novel and there's a game. And the game is billed as a post-apocalyptic, retro-futuristic, biopunk extraction shooter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're
Which, of course, has the extraction shooter part is a very much a video game aspect.
Oh yeah, and truth be told, it's kind of surprising that I haven't seen as many TTRPGs take notes from extraction, from extraction style shooters, like obviously the big example is Escape from Tarkov, also the sweatiest example, but that's
Helldivers is one that I've played obviously a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, Forever Winter also falls into that same category. Forever Winter is a bit clumsier, but I do like it visually for the visual language it presents. It's got definitely the darkness. So yeah, if Stalker, if you combine Stalker with Escape from Tarkov, you basically have an idea of what Sparkplug Chronicles are, which is interesting too because, like I said, when I was posting lore on Reddit, I haven't tipped my hand about that yet. So from a lobby perspective, it's just this weird, almost cosmic horror alternative history. And so you know, the hat hasn't been tipped about what it actually is yet. So I thought that was interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the big reason why I find it amusing that we haven't seen as many in the TTRPG space is an extraction game is, at the end of the day, a massive with extra steps game of chicken. It is you always have the opportunity to back off and get out of there. If you try and push it to get more stuff or to get better stuff, and you end up losing everything, that's the choice that you made.
Yeah.
Which is why you can have some extractions that go less than a minute because people got lucky with the route, and some that don't. And a lot of times when it comes to the environment with those sort of things, there's a bit of randomization. And are you planning on carrying over some of that randomization when it comes to going into these black zones to get supplies?
So I'm still working on trying to figure out. There's certain things that we're doing. Like, first of all, when it comes to the extraction mechanic,
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to play with. I didn't want it to be a jarring, unrealistic aspect. Like, I also didn't want the characters to feel as if they had an kind of an overpowering overseer aspect. And that's the thing about Helldivers.
Mm-hmm.
You
have the
jump
whole
down.
call in tactics.
Yeah. But the point is that you can basically land anywhere, and then you just have to get to an extraction point to get out. And from my perspective, I was more interested in the fact that, how deep do you go into the zone, and then like going back to the stalker idea, like you have to get deeper and deeper, and things get weirder and weirder, and at the end of the day, at some point you can turn around and leave. And when the path exiting is going to be easier because because you're retracing your steps, but every time you go deeper, it gets more dangerous. And so we are establishing the rules about how the challenge gets more difficult the further you go in. But on top of that, I also didn't want an easy extraction. I didn't want a situation where, and the same thing with D&D rules is like, well, my character, how do we handle death, and how do we handle that? And so within the settings, mechanics, and the lore, there are genetically engineered life forms, which are literally player characters that you can play, NPCs you can interact with, but one of them are hollows, which are basically people that you can assume control of. These are genetically engineered creatures that basically can shapeshift into you, and you are remote controlling them, and you are becoming them for all intents and purposes. So you can enter these zones safely, controlling a hollow. But if your character gets killed, once again, it's not permanent because you are still alive back at the home base. But your character, you can't just teleport the character back. Everything that you have is now on a corpse, a faceless corpse at that point. And so you got to grab another hollow, probably less equipped. He'll go out there and pilfer this faceless corpse to get your stuff back. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to. So that's an actual in-setting mechanic. It's not something I threw in, and it's jarring. It's an actual thing that people have to contend with, and so that's one of the aspects where I wanted to put in the extraction shooter mechanic, but make it an actual part of the setting. That becomes an active point that the characters have to deal with. That where and there's actually even rules about like there's one of the characters in the illustrated novel goes in without a hollow, but he controls 4 hollows around him. Mm-hmm. So it looks like 5 clones are walking together with cables connecting their heads, mm-hmm. and one guy is the core, and he's basically remote controlling these hollows live. Mm-hmm. And you can do that, but most people go in controlling hollows, and so there are these corpses just everywhere of these decaying, faceless people that have been stripped of all their gear. And so I wanted to add that and put that as part of the setting. So that's an active part. So if your player character is playing Reapers, as they're called, that is an active mechanic that you have to contend with.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that you talk about on the Kickstarter preview is prestige rules, which gives an alternate path. What exactly does prestige rules entail?
So when I first got exposed to prestige rules, I was legitimately initially not a fan, because the idea itself seemed like, wait a second, are you telling me I'm losing all my progress for a marginal benefit and I have to restart? But then the more I looked at it, and I thought, a lot of people kind of complain that they're interesting. The number of times players talk about getting up in levels. The advancing of levels is important, but the advancing of levels also significantly slows down. And people talk about what's the golden zone. Oh, the golden zone is between like levels 5 and 9, and that's where you feel powerful, but you're not a god yet. And when you get to level 15, suddenly There's an ego that comes into anything that's small. You just don't even care about. You just want to deal with the big monsters. You get to these epic fights. But you very much become somewhat, I guess, detached as a human being within the setting. And so I wanted to play off the idea of saying, okay, I'm not going to make I don't want to have a bunch of challenge rating 19 monsters, but I want to create a situation where we can extend the standard rules when it comes to how to player progression. So I thought, okay, let's create a system where that players can create a character, and when they level up, when they reach a level using the prestige system, they gain a permanent buff, but then reset back to 1. And so their level cap. So when you're level 1, your level cap is 2. When you hit level 2, you reset back to 1, but now your level cap increases to 3. So you basically have to advance, retract, advance, retract, advance, retract. And every single time you do a retraction, you get to do a new unlockable bonus. And the higher the level, when you do your reset, the bigger the bonus you get back. Mm-hmm. And there are tons of both in-game and mechanical bonuses, so that by the time you're level 10, you're significantly more powerful than a level 10 character, because you have literally done this, consistently for a very long time. But it also creates that zone where you're playing a lot within a mid to low level environment. Yep. And you don't have to worry so much about having to deal with the larger monsters, right? It's one of those situations where when you're dealing with stuff like the stories I talked about, you want to have big monsters, but I don't want to have the big monsters to be something that the players should ever have to deal with. Like, you're never going to fight this thing. Like, it's like the dragon. Like, you're never killing this thing. Like, I like the idea of monsters in the idea of the setting that there are challenge rating 15 and 20 monsters. You should never ever think that you have a chance against this thing. So when you see it, like, do we attack it? Like, are you insane? We know we're not going to, because we will never be that level. And that creates this situation of creating a situation where players can still feel progress, but they always will continually feel as if they are fighting against something that's more powerful than them. We don't want to, it is very much a GM idea, the fact that I want to make sure my players fear death all the time. And to do that, I have to stop them from ever getting past level 10. Mm-hmm. And this is one way of doing it.
And I'm not sure if this was intentional, but the way you describe it feels very much like something out of a action roguelike, like Hades or the Binding of Isaac and so on. I'm not sure if that was intentional, but that's the vibe I get.
Well, extraction shooters and roguelikes have kind of a similar idea that you go in, and when you die, if you die before you have a chance to get out, like, there are lots of roguelikes. Like, there are certain types of roguelikes where you play until you die. And that's it. You just play until you die. But a lot of other roguelikes, you can play until you die or until you get to the end of this story. Mm-hmm. And then you get an additional bonus for completing the story, but then you get kicked out again, and then you can start over. So there's tons of roguelikes that I own, I love. Actually, I'm not a fan of a traditional straight roguelikes. I like the roguelikes where if you die, you get to still earn your experience. Like in Sparkplug, you don't lose your experience. You lose your gear, but you don't lose experience. Mm-hmm. So if you go up and you die, another player will be like, I guess I have to make a new character. Like, no, you have your experience. You're still you. You can now go back in, grab the stuff off your corpse, and continue advancing. So you get to have players that get to make stupid decisions, but the cost is that I had to buy another holo, and I have to now go into that holo and pick up all the stuff that I've acquired before some other NPCs steal the stuff off of my corpse. So it creates that in it. And once again, the prestige system, which is an optional system, like, you don't have to do the prestige system if you don't want to, but it creates a system where the players get to remain in their low-level aspects for longer. And although some players may not want that, I thankfully it's not like it's like a roguelike in the fact that no, if you die or you live, no matter what you do, you're always getting experience. You're always getting passive buffs. You're always advancing in levels. Even if you have to reset back to level 1, you're still got your the gear that you've acquired still sticks with you. You know, any modifications that you've done to your gear, if you manage to recover them, still applies. And then you've got these permanent buffs that come from the prestige system as well, because there's 10 levels of benefit, and there's like 8 or 9 different. There's like maybe 100, 200 different benefits you can get from. So you could play with all of those.
Yeah. Now, one of the concepts that's also brought up is the notion of Warborn and the rules regarding them. What can you tell me about how that's going to work?
So Warborn is the way of putting a slightly obvious currency system in there. So it's more than just, yes, there is Aaron technology and forbidden knowledge within these black zones. But I felt that that would be kind of few and far between. And while I can also throw in locations, because there could be adventures with locations, you know, like there's a biocore that has expanded flesh wire and has taken over this hospital. You have to get to this hospital, and there's something weird at that hospital that you have to get, and that can be a campaign MacGuffin. That doesn't change the fact that players may want to seek out additional things, and that's playing off of stuff like Prospect, which had it, even stuff like it's a bit of an homage to Command and Conquer, right? And Command and Conquer, there's a cosmic horror aspect of Command and Conquer that's really laid down in the first game, that because of the campiness of the writing in the series, it kind of overlooked over the successive games. Like, yeah, guess what? Something fell from the stars and is sucking the life essence out of everything, but it's creating crystals that are an insanely good power source. And the governments of the world are like, oh, hold on, maybe we should cultivate this stuff and let it prosper, not completely oblivious to the fact that where this stuff exists, the environment completely collapses. All life is destroyed because it's sucking all the nutrients and the life out of the soil. It's killing all the plants. It's expelling pollution. But instead of just trying to destroy it, they want it to prosper so they can cultivate it. And so the idea of the Warborn is actually that it's the same thing. There are these genetic mutations, this canker, there's this miasma that comes as a result of these genetic experiments that have perpetrated this setting for 100 years. And when you're going into these black zones, it's an area where these experiments and the results of and the consequences of conflict have created these hell zones where you have to go in, and there's miasma, there's pollution. But as a side effect, that these new minerals and new materials are starting to emerge, and they're called Warborn. And so it becomes another reward system. So it's not like so there's no currency in the setting, right? So it's the idea that in the game, like you would get platinum and gold, but now it comes to a point where, yeah, there's a credit system. Those credits generally won't matter in the outlying towns, but what they want are the Warborn, because they can do stuff like heal wounds and heal injuries, power reactors and so forth. And we want that, even though the side effect of these materials is the complete slow annihilation of the planet's ecosystem. But unlike in something like Command and Conquer, it's not just one thing. It's like 4 or 5 different things that are potential, that have their own benefits.
Oh, yeah. Now, with that in mind, when it comes, obviously, we opened this talking about firearms, and that's going, and I'm guessing some of the stuff that you're doing for that armory thing is going to be carried into the Sparkplug Chronicles when it comes to expanding on firearms, giving a more codified approach to firearms instead of trying to have them be crossbows with extra steps, essentially.
Yeah. So that was the whole point, because in the details of the setting, being this alternate reality where biological mutations and genetic engineering becomes something that is predominant from the 1900s, and so it becomes this kind of dystopian biopunk, where biological engines are replacing internal combustion and stuff like that. And it all comes about through spark plugs. A spark plug is not, when we talk about spark plug, we're not talking about the automotive. It's an actual implanted cybernetic device is alien technology. And every spark plug has its own unique spark of brilliance. But I made an arbitrary rule that none of the sparks are a gun. There's no spark that's a weapon. In essence, it is a kind of genuine offer of high technology that humanity mutates. And so the idea that the whole black zone, the miasma, is all due to humanity's misuse of alien technology. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the alien technology's fault. We're the ones who did it by turning them into weapons. So as a result, I made that rule that there weren't any bioweapons. So when it comes in an homage to these old films like Stalker, that the idea, the fact that for a Reaper, like you're a Reaper, mm-hmm. you have, you're genetically engineered. You're going into this kind of futuristic dystopian hellscape, and you have a World War II FN RAL rifle because mm-hmm. that's what you got. Or you're using so I decided in the original book, I go, well, if I'm limiting them to 20th century weapons, like they're not going to use 19th century cap and ball weapons. Yeah. They're going to use firearms from World War I to the 1970s. Mm-hmm. They're not going to use anything modern. It's going to be M16s, AR-15s, and M60s, and so forth. Mm-hmm. And like World War II rifles, whatever they can get their hands on. Same thing with the Civil War. Like a lot of people think, oh yeah, this revolver that you see in all the films, this is what made the West. I went, no. I was like reading up on the history, and I was like, oh, it turns out the kind of the cartridge pistols you'd see in films like Deadwood and in Tombstone, those were the expensive ones. 90% of the firearms that the average person walked around with in the Old West were their Civil War firearms that their parents had, that they inherited. So most people still walked around with cap and ball revolvers. Mm-hmm. So in this setting, there are people that'll have weapons from the 1970s, but the vast majority of them are still using weapons from the 50s and 40s. But when I looked at Ultramodern, I was just like, well, that's 6 weapons. Mm-hmm. Because I tried to make everything generic. So like there's autoloader, there's revolver, there's a couple pistols and rifles, but that's it, because I had 150 weapons to make, and I had 1,000 years of history to pull from. So when I was doing it, I'm like, I have to expand this. I need to have 150 weapons just from that 60, 70 years of period. And turns out there are huge differences in weapons from that time period. But then I realized, like, why don't I just put this into the armory? So that's what I did. And so those weapons are getting put back. So in Sparkplug Chronicles, the tech level 1 firearms are in Sparkplug. But if you want to have the tech level 0, 2, 3, 4, and 5, you got to see the armory because it has the other ones. Mm-hmm. I'm not giving people the option to have a musket in Sparkplug because you can get a World War I or World War II rifle easier. And because of the new rules, only an idiot would walk around with a musket when you can load a magazine firearm. Mm-hmm.
And since you brought up the different tech levels, for the purpose of brevity, what would be the equivalent of each of those tech levels, just using historical parallels?
Well, in the original Amethyst, tech level was entirely defined by power usage. So there was tech level, basically every gun ever made was a tech level 0 because it didn't use electricity, because the whole thing about Amethyst was disrupting of electrical circuits. When I got to Ultramodern, I played with that a bit and decided, no, it's not just about electrification. It became about just advancement. So with the armory, I made sure I defined it further. So tech level 0 is basically everything up until the end of the 20th century. So everything up to the Old West. So cap and ball, revolvers, muskets, dragoons, those are all tech level 0. When we got into the beginnings of magazine and clip-fed weapons, that was when we got into tech level 1. So tech level 1 is World War I, World War II, Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. So pretty long. So we get the beginnings of decent range combat, we get into clip magazine, and beginnings of portable machine gun weaponry. Mm-hmm. Tech level 2 was kind of modern day, but for the purposes of the armory, I determined tech level 2 to being late 1970s until the modern day. So it's everything that we've developed that you see in Iraq, Desert Storm, before that, Desert Shield, the War on Terror, and all the things that people are seeing now. But it's not including anything funky and weird. The moment you get into stuff like self-propelled projectiles, which actually was a thing back in the past, but the more like the guided weapons, rail guns, laser weaponry,
probably caseless ammo as well.
So the funny thing is that caseless. So there's two types of case. So when we get into tech level 3, that's all just science fiction. So there's a lot of pop culture. So if there's a pop culture weapon that you want, chances are it's in there. So the G11 CNC, which is a Heckler and Koch G11. So the CNC is this I think 7mm caseless machine gun that never caught off the ground, but a lot of people, you can still find this weapon. It's a cool weapon. It exists. It was made in the 1970s, and it's in the game as a TL2 weapon. But if you want to have what you really want to see in tech level 3, that's where the electronic pulse rifles are, which are these 10mm explosive tip cases. We know exactly what movie we're referencing. Right? So there's like 5 of those. So I have I call them E95 instead of M95, and M, so I replaced the M with E and I call them electronic pulse rifles. And there's like 6 of them that are from Aliens. A lot of them from Aliens Fireteam Elite. So because Aliens just has 2 guns, and Aliens Fireteam Elite gives you like 12. So I use the game as reference. So there's we're talking gaming point. We're looking at the firearms entry. Yeah. I basically went to people and say, if there's a game that has a unique firearm that you want to see, like, let me know. And people were just like, I want to have this gun from this show. I was just like, well, this is just a shotgun. I have a shotgun. When someone's just like, I want the service revolver from Control. I'm like, okay, now we're talking. That's a weird freaking weapon. Let's put that in the game. So there's a lot of stuff.
I'm pretty sure if I was in that thread, I probably would have suggested the gravity gun from a manga called Blame. Or those whatever kind of firearm they were in Gantz. But there are a few weapons I'd be curious what you'd probably put their particular tech level in, because these were highly experimental weapons of their day. And
well, there is a vapor rifle thing. So the game, some of the weapons in Gantz, like I said, Gantz kind of has a grotesquerie about it, but their type of weapons, there's a similar weapon that was in an anime called Technolize, where it basically just erases a portion of the person's body. And so I have that in the game. It's called a vapor rifle. So it's, there are, in some situations, I've kept the names in if I feel it's not something that's recognizable. So I use the name so you know what it's coming from. Like there's an entry called a cam rail, and only lets you know that if you go cam rail, I go, that's familiar. We go cam rail, and go, it's the rifle that Matt Damon uses in Elysium. So I kept that name in there. Same thing with, if I say Auto 9, you might not know what it is, because it's not like the Lawgiver, which is a recognizable name. So I changed the name on the Lawgiver, but not on the Auto 9, because the Auto 9 is the pistol that RoboCop uses. Yeah. But only in the extended lore do you know it's called an Auto 9. If I say ZF1, you know exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Because it's mentioned in the movie. So I don't call this ZF1. I call it the XF1. It's not even a huge reach. You know exactly what the weapon is.
Yeah, but one that I was thinking of is either an exact or an equivalent of the G11, the H&K G11, the weapon that's been referred to as Kraut Space Magic, and I can understand why, because even seeing how the inside of it works, I still have no idea how it works.
Yeah, but because of the time period, it's technically still a tech level 2 weapon, because even though it was heavily advanced for its time, it's still a weapon that came about from the late 1970s. So, like I said, in the game, the Heckler & Koch G11 is in the game, but it's in the tech level 2 setting, even though all the pulse rifles from Aliens, which are also caseless, are in tech level 3.
Yeah, in that same vein, I'd imagine something like the Steyr AUG would also be tech level 2 as well.
Styrog. What?
Steyr AUG was one of the first widely used bullpup rifles. It was first introduced in I believe it was the 70s by the Austrians. It's also called the Sturmgewehr. I'm gonna fuck the pronunciation. Sturmgewehr. And
How do you spell that? S-T...
STEYRAUG.
So I have the Steyr GB, which is a one-handed weapon, and I have the Steyr AUG.
Yeah. It's the rifle that I'm referring to, and one of the big things that was a massive deal was, one, it was a reliable bullpup weapon.
Yep.
There were bullpups before that, but they were adopted for like 5 minutes, and then they weren't. And it was also made mostly of polymer. And
Yep.
It's been around since the late 70s. It started out in 1977. The other big thing it had was what's referred to as a progressive trigger. Like instead of having a switch for single shot or full auto, you pull the thing a little bit for single shot and pull it a little bit more for full auto. It's still pretty advanced even now, but it was considered very futuristic at the time.
Now, the thing that's interesting about the bullpup, like one of those things that's one of the things that expanded the number of weapons, was because I decided to create rules that differentiate regular rifles from bullpup. It was just like a little thing. Effectively, I think the rule is even though bullpups are two-handed weapons, you don't have disadvantage. Like there's a specific rule for bullpups. So if you have a bullpup, there's actually, that's one of those things we're trying to create rules. So yeah, bullpup is more compact. You do not have disadvantage on attack rolls if you're within 5 feet of a hostile creature who can see you, who isn't incapacitated. Additionally, if you're employing a foregrip with your bullpup and you move or are moved more than 5 feet, your penalty to attack with two-handed small arms is reduced by 1. So it's got a slight definite physical advantage over a regular rifle.
When you talked about tech level 3 being the more sci-fi stuff, would that also include things like recoilless? Like a recoilless rifle?
Well, once again, obviously there've been recoilless rifles for 100 years, so it depends on what specific one you're talking about.
Yeah, there's been experiments with electrically charged coil guns. That's been.
Oh yeah. So obviously, it's called the EM property. So we have coil guns and rail guns as tech level 2. So it's not tech level 3, 4, and 5. Tech level 3 is generally slightly better weapon, traditional bullets. So it's got your caseless ammunition, your electronically stacked projectiles like Metal Storm, your small your miniature rocket propulsion, your gyrojets. Even though gyrojets actually been around for 100 years, these are modern explosive tip gyrojets. And so forth. And then when you get into tech level 4, you get portable railguns and electromagnetic stuff like that. When you get to tech level 5, you get lasers. Tech level 6, you have plasma bottled weapons. And more of the freakier, like nanotechnology is in the 4 and the 5 as well. So some of the really like freakishly weird weapons fall into that category as well.
Black hole gun or something.
Yeah. Like I said, there are some, like, once again, we've actually, because of the rules, just when you started talking, I had just decided that I was going to split the super heavy weapon category, because they realized, even though it wasn't that big, there are still way more there's still way more two-handed weapons. I realized there was too much of a divide between heavy weapons and weapons that were even bigger, like weapons you could carry and weapons that you could never carry in any capacity. So I had to divide them into super heavy and massive.
Yeah.
So there's massive weaponry, which are weapons that are like 500, 2,000, 25,000 pounds. These are weapons that you're never moving from any point. And then that allows us, and then there are regular heavy weapons, which are just heavy weapons that weigh between 25 and 100 pounds that feasibly somebody could actually carry.
Yeah.
And then your BFGs are in the tech level 3 in that category. So when we were looking at the tech level 3 super heavy weapons, I got to have the Wave Motion Annihilator, Titan class plasma projectors, Tesla resonance coils, just crazy stuff.
Yeah. And
particle beam guns. There's literally a nuclear missile in the book.
And
so
since you and I are fans of Titanfall, I do have to ask if the temptation to put in an equivalent of the smart pistol was ever brought up.
oh, it's been in there for smart pistol. The smart pistol's in the original Ultramodern 5. It's been there since day one.
Ah.
So it's in there. Smart pistol's in there.
Yeah. As it should be.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, when people that go, "Oh, you got to have the lawgiver," I'm like, I got the lawgiver. Like there are certain things that people will go, "Well, that weapon is iconic." I go, "Yes, but does it do something special?" So someone's just like, "Well, you have to have Han Solo's blaster pistol." I go, "Yes, but is Han Solo's blaster pistol any different than any other laser blaster pistol?" Because I have a blaster pistol. But is Han Solo's blaster pistol any different than any other blaster pistol? Or is it just the fact that it's Han Solo's blaster pistol and it looks a little weird because it's based off of a really funky German World War II pistol? Other than that, is there anything that's really...
was based on those Mausers, which were when they came out, they were outdated because they were still using stripper clips.
Yeah, it's just crazy. It's just crazy. So when people were asking, like, "Oh, do you have this?" I'm like, "Well, like I have that, but it counts. But I'm not going to just to put a blaster and just have it and just tweak the stats slightly so it looks a bit different to justify its entrance." So for someone's like, "Where are all the weapons from Star Wars?" I go, "They are there. I have plasma pistols and laser rifles. They all do the same thing. I didn't feel the need. Like it's weirdly ironic the fact that I've got 6 different pulse rifles from Aliens, but nothing named after Star Wars. I don't have a phaser, for example.
Yeah, because a phaser is just a energy pistol.
Yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things where, yeah, I have an energy pistol that has a stun setting. It's just like, but it's not called a phaser because that's definitely something recognizable that I would probably stay away from. So when we look at some of the weapons, I'm looking at most of them are in the tech level, or the one-handed tech level 3 weapons where most of the pop culture stuff goes into play. Like looking at the one-handed TL3s, Auto 9, the weapon from Controls called the Brutalist Object of Power. Let's see here. There's an anime where a gun can transform into 3 different modes. That's here. It's called the Demiurge. Pico Positron, that's from Men in Black. Smart pistol, once again, there's a smart pistol. We were just talking about it. But yeah, so there's, and then we go into tech level 3 two-handed weapons. That's tech level 2, tech level 3. We look at HV Penetrator, that's from Fear. Accelerator Rifle, I don't know where that's from. Anti-Material, that's from Chemtrail, that's from Elysium. Servana Nastava Nostle, that must be Ghost in the Shell. Yeah, that's from Ghost in the Shell. Because there's actually 2 weapons from Ghost in the Shell. Speaking of Ghost in the Shell, there's the Electronic Burst Rifle, the Electronic Pulse Rifle, the Electronic Scout Rifle, the Electronic Smart Rifle. So I got 3 different ones. If I go, hope like 5 different ones here. Hades Incinerator, that's from... Where is that from? That could be from Alien Resurrection. M25 Phase Plasma Rifle, that's from Terminator 2.
Does it have a 40
railgun
range?
Yes, that's actually the Shift Energy Modulator and the Shift Nano Modulator. There's a very obscure cyberpunk FPS like Twitch shooter. Oh god, I can't even remember the name of it. But you only get 2 guns, but those 2 guns can transform into 4 other guns. So you get 8 guns, but you have to unlock them. So you only ever have 2 guns, but you can transform them however you want, and you can hot swap between them. And those have been in the game since day one. I'll remember the game later, I'm sure. Micro missile launcher, taser carbine, thumper laser rifle. Let's see here. Ultimate sniper rifle, Watson machine gun, not sure where that idea came from. Vapor rifle, just talked about it. There's the ZFX pod, so we know where that's from now.
Yep.
So there's tons. There's tons of things in there, and more often than not, I'm doing that for gimmicks. I know most likely people are using the tech level 2 entries, and that's why those like the tech level 2 small arm for tech level 2. There's probably 300 of just tech level 2 firearms, because I have a funny feeling that people are going to be doing that most of the time. And those are all real weapons. There's no fictional tech level 0 to tech level 2 weapons. Those are all real. There's no fictitious weapons in that category.
Oh yeah. And with that in mind, as far as the campaign guide, what are you shooting for as far as its particular page count?
Well, for Sparkplug, my guess is that because we're adding in all these firearm rules, and I still got to do monsters and so forth, my guess is probably going to be excess 300, maybe 350, 370 pages. It'll depend kind of on how big the armory is, because the monster manual came to 445 pages, which was the largest book we've ever done. And the armory is probably going to push, my guess is going to push into high 300s, maybe 400 pages. It'll depending on the illustrations. So Sparkplug, because it's carrying over the firearms from armory, my guess is that's probably going to be in the excess of 300 pages. Now, currently, for example, and that's the reason why the lore is going to have to dictate that. Like, for example, looking at the files now, it's 46,000 words, and that's basically the core setting and everything until firearms. So I haven't done maps, I haven't done adventures, I haven't done monsters, and I haven't done equipment and armor. And equipment and armor, once again, copying over from Armory, and then I'll be adding in all the monsters and then battle maps and kind of implied adventures based off of these maps. And after that, there's that'll probably be it. So my guess is that it's going to be 300 pages.
Which would be a decent size for something like this. But with now, the Kickstarter currently isn't active yet. When are you planning on doing the launch? And is it going to go for 30 days, 25 days? How long are you going to put it?
Well, you get the breaking news because like the original plan was to launch it tomorrow. That was the original launch date for this title. But unfortunately, one of the people I work with, not me, but one of the people I work with, had just had a massive family crisis, of the highest order. And unfortunately, I said, like, okay, I've already had a nightmare situation dealing with trying to launch a Kickstarter around Christmas, and we're already pushing it as it is. That's why I'm a little shocked that they're launching this Ghost in the Shell campaign that'll end in mid-December, unless it's a 2-week campaign. If it's a 2-week campaign, launching in November is probably okay, but they're doing a 30-day campaign launching in mid-November is like, you realize there's a lot of people that won't back a Kickstarter when they're buying stuff for their kids. So I have to make a decision that we're probably going to have to push this back until February of next year. Now, that being said, this is the update that's getting pushed out today. Or at the time of us recording this, so that's the more accurate thing to say. That people are like, oh, so it's going to get pushed back by 4 months. And I was like, it's actually not, because if I launch the campaign, I'm still going to finish the Armory before I do Sparkplug Chronicles. So, so the schedule of my writing is finish Armory, do Sparkplug, and then do the Ultramodern Player's Guide. And so right now, that's the schedule. So if I launch the campaign now, I launch the campaign in 3 months, it doesn't change the fact that I'm going to do the finish off Sparkplug Chronicles at the same time. So if we launch in February for 2 weeks, that was the plan to launch a run for 2 weeks. It's the delivery date is probably not going to change. And that's further accentuated by the fact that we're not doing offset printing anymore. We've almost completely canceled all of our offset print runs. We're just basically going straight print on demand from now on. That does mean an unfortunate issue with some people that want a physical book, and yet you can still order a physical book. It'll just be print on demand. You just won't get the fancy exclusives. Like you won't get like, with the last Ultramodern, you won't get the leather wrap, you won't get the spot UV coating, you won't get a satin bookmark, but you can get the game a year and a half before you would normally get it. And that's, I think, a big factor for one of the reasons why we did, because I was always frustrated at the fact that when I could only I always wanted to run on one project at a time, but it frustrated me the fact that I would be sitting on my hands for a year because of all the delays in printing, and taking 2 years to do Affinity, and then 2 years for Amethyst, and 2 years for the Ultramodern. I was just like, I can produce so much more. And then in the last year, I produced the Bestiary, I produced the October's Arcane Almanac, and I'm putting out the Armory all in the span of 1 year. If I was kickstarting those with an offset print run, each one of those would take 2 years to process. But now you can order the Bestiary in print today. You can order the October's Arcane Almanac today. Sure, it doesn't have the spot UV coating. Sure, it doesn't have all that stuff. But it's a standard color print on Drive-Thru RPG. It's still about the same price. The retail version of Ultramodern is $5 more than the standard print-on-demand version on Drive-Thru RPG, because they're listed now on the same SKU. So you look at it and go, the standard print-on-demand is $54, and the retail version is $59. Wouldn't the print-on-demand be more expensive? I go, technically it's not, because the standard print is a relatively decent price. The reason why the retail version is $59 is that because that's the spot UV version with the satin bookmark, and that's why it costs more expensive. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing, is that if we're not going to do an exclusive edition, like what we did with the leather wrap version of Affinity, the leather wrap version of Ultramodern, if we're not going to do that, then there's no point doing an offset print run. If we do print on demand, chances are your shipping prices are going to be better. I don't have to deal with all the stress and anxiety of having to deal with Chinese brokers and Chinese printing, and then get hit with insane tariffs. Mm-hmm. Like I said, my last project, which we dumped but we had all of Amethyst and all of the Ultramodern coming on one boat. And once it hit distribution and all that happened, the printing costs for all that was about $25,000. I got hit with $35,000 on top of that. And there's just like, when I look at what's going on now, whenever I see a book or a board game popping up on Kickstarter, I'm like, well, you must be European. Because almost nobody's doing Chinese to American direct unless they have some way of getting around that. So for me, and of course on top of that, if you're a North American backer, like if this Ghost in the Shell game, which is most certainly a European printing and distribution, I would hate to think what the shipping costs are going to be for Canada or North American in general. And that's why there's a lot of European board games that are getting no backers from North America, because you're looking like $85, $100 shipping prices. Mm-hmm. Where if you go to print on demand to Drive-Thru RPG, they have a print on demand facility in States, and they have a print on demand facility in Europe. You're getting your product printed as close to your location as possible, and it's getting shipped from your location as possible. So your shipping price is going to be $15, $20. So for me, it's just easier. And so when we launch this campaign, it's just to fund the artwork. Mm-hmm. And that's the other thing. I don't have to have $30,000 or $40,000 or $50,000. Most of the time I'm like, okay, I'm going to set it for 10, but I really need 50 for the print run. Mm-hmm. But when I ran the first campaign, my first Amethyst campaign for 10,000, I only needed 10,000. That's what the art budget cost. I didn't lose any money off that project because that money went to Nick. Mm-hmm. And we paid for the art, and that's why we have Amethyst in color for 5 different systems. But with Affinity and Ultramodern, there was constant dicking around trying to figure out how we were going to pay for everything. Because even though we had $85,000, I had to go, yeah, but $60,000 of that money is going to be printing, distribution, and facilitation. And that could be a real nightmare. And if you're just running a campaign and you're doing print on demand, you just have to worry about the content. You don't have to be a business person. You just have to give the fans what they want. And I can give you your book. And that was the thing, when Ultramodern went to Kickstarter, I made a promise that I wouldn't activate the print on demand until the books hit retail, until the books got to backers. I was sitting on that product for a year. I refused to launch the print on demand until the book until the retail books got to backers. And it was just like, if you had backed it as a PDF and then just ordered the print on demand, you would have gotten your book 6 months before the retail version, because that's how fast print on demand works. So I'm like, why am I wasting my time? I'll just, I can run 2 Kickstarters a year because I can produce the product, release on print on demand, and go, well, I'm done. I don't have to worry about distribution facilitation. The product's done. I can move on to the next project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
I will certainly be looking forward to seeing how it develops. But with that said, I do want to sincerely thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to come all the way to my monastery and enjoy the madness that happens here.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And anytime you see fit to return, the door is always open. As I often say around here, drinking is not mandatory, but it is encouraged.
Oh, I'm getting drunk tonight. Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a hot mic?
We're live, pal.
All right. Cool.
And of course, a sincere thanks goes out to everyone who took the time out of their schedule to come onto the show and enjoy the madness. And there'll be plenty more where that came from, as there always is here on the open bar of the internet. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.
Was